Hi everyone, and thanks for joining our second in our series of IP valuation webinars. And today we'll be focusing on how businesses can identify and unlock IP assets that tend to be overlooked in their business, and that's from our experience. So, just to introduce who's speaking today, so you've got myself, my name is Saj, and I'm the Evaluations Manager at Metis Partners. We also have my colleague Jack here.
Hi everyone, pleasure to be here.
Who's another one of our analysts in the evaluation team. You might recognise myself from the previous one. So we typically handle all the evaluation assignments for the company at the moment, and that involves liaising with clients and gathering information to allow us to analyse and value the IP of a business, which is actually still a relatively niche area. So moving on to what we'll be covering today on our agenda in a minute. But before that, just to briefly recap what we covered for the previous webinar in March, in case you missed that. So we discussed how IP assets can open up lending options with things such as IP-backed finance, or to support investment by showcasing the value in intangible assets. So if that's something you missed or you're interested in, then please get in touch after this webinar and we'll be happy to provide you with the slides and the recording of the previous one. And also just to quickly recap who we are and what we do. So Metis Partners, for those who don't know, is a commercial IP firm that specialises in identifying, valuing and selling IP assets for companies. We operate from our head office here in Glasgow, but we do also have a presence in California, London, and shortly we'll be opening an office in Sofia, Bulgaria, to help kind of better serve our European clients. And we also have a very diverse team here with combined experience in the field of around 50 years. So moving on to what we'll be speaking about today. So the agenda will start with us explaining and giving a bit of background and context as to why IP assets tend to be overlooked, and this may resonate with some of the business owners listening in today who have maybe fallen into some of these traps in the past. And then we'll also highlight some of the risks that can arise as a result of not identifying and realising the full value in your IP. We'll then move on to talk about and break down what we find are some of the most commonly overlooked assets.
We're going to be grounding it in the real world as well, because we're also going to be discussing some case studies, companies we've worked with and the IP we've helped them uncover. And then finally we've got a real treat for you as well. We're going to look over a little exercise we've made up on how to identify hidden IP assets in your business based on one of the processes we use. So lots of great stuff is coming up today. Very first thing I want to touch upon, this I think is a great little marketing graphic we use just to illustrate what we mean by hidden IP assets. So it's what we call our IP iceberg. So if you look at this here, what we tend to imagine is at the tip of this iceberg is a company's tangible assets. If you think of the full IP iceberg as the business, so tip of the iceberg, it's on view, everyone knows it's there, much like tangible assets, every business knows it has them. But if you look at this iceberg here, there's so much of it hidden under the surface. And when we're thinking of businesses, that's what we're thinking of as value, and we're thinking of it as IP. So look here, we'll be talking about some of these today. Many IP assets hidden underneath, things that are quite obvious, such as brands and reputation and patents. But there's a lot of things that aren't quite so obvious at first glance, like know-how, and things like critical business processes as well. And one of the analogies we always use, and if you've ever been to a Metis event, you'll have heard this before, it's the USB stick analogy. It's a great little thing to remember, and it's if you're thinking about what IP does your company have, best thing to think of is what wouldn't you want an employee putting on a USB stick and walking out of your business with into the hands of a competitor, because you'll find that very often that is your IP, and that can be quite critical IP as well. So we're going to quickly run through 4 of what we think are the main reasons why companies overlook IP, because there must be a reason behind it. People aren't just doing it on purpose. And these are 4 of the most common reasons we typically find when we work with companies and we speak to them. The first one is what we like to call the day-to-day effect, and that is really just you're in a business, you're working with an IP asset every single day, spending so much of your time with it that you start to forget about it as an asset. So that can be things like databases, customer databases, things that you scan through every single day, things that you add to every day, but you just start to forget about the real value that holds. Another really common one is that people are just unaware it can be protected. People tend to be quite clued up on things like trademarks and patents. You know, these formal pieces of IP you can register. Whereas what people don't tend to remember is things like trade secrets, you know, informal IP such as that. You can put protection methods in place to stop people from getting them as well. So that isn't something that you should really ever overlook in your business. Another one that people tend to not think about is they're unaware of the potential value of their IP. So we'll find that a lot of companies, you know, they might have a database, a technical database that they're not using, something that isn't really key to their day-to-day processes within the business, but that IP could be very, very valuable in someone else's hands. I mean, you might have an old customer list that you don't use. Think of how much value that could be to a competitor or someone else in your market. They could get a lot of value from it. And the final point we always touch upon is quite a general one, is people don't ever think about the actual value. So in your business, you know, do you ever sit down and think, what would the impact be if I suddenly lost, let's say, my critical trade secret, or even the customer database I use, or a piece of software that's integral? When you think about it that way, you actually start to think, right, these things could be incredibly valuable to me in my business, and I should protect them. Again, quite often, we actually find as well when we're working with companies that the only time people tend to think about the IP they have is when they're thinking about exit valuations, at which point sometimes it's too late if the protection methods weren't put in place previously. So just to illustrate this further, this is what we think is a really, really good little news story that just highlights a few of these points before. We picked this up in our news feed in January of this year, and it was about a trademark battle between two companies. One of the companies was a company called Viacom. They're a TV production company, and they are the producer of a cartoon called SpongeBob SquarePants. In the SpongeBob cartoon, you know, the name SpongeBob SquarePants is trademarked. They have many, many formal protection methods in place to protect that. But as part of the show, there was a fictional restaurant called the Krusty Krab, which featured heavily throughout their merchandise, all throughout their website, their social media, played a big role. They never thought about it as being an asset to protect, and therefore never moved to trademark it. What eventually happened in this case was a businessman who saw that name, saw all of the goodwill it had accumulated, how well known it was. He decided he wanted to open up a restaurant chain under that name, and he moved to make a trademark application for it. And obviously at that point Viacom thought, well, wait a minute, we might not have thought there was a much value in this piece of IP, in this trademark, but suddenly now someone else is going to use it. Actually, we're not happy about that, we want to try and protect it. And because they didn't have any formal protection in place, they had to go through costly legal proceedings. It took a lot of time and money, and they had to try and prove that actually that was their trademark, even though it was unregistered and that he could not use it. They eventually won this battle in the end, but again, it was a lot of money and a lot of time spent, because if they got protection early, they would have avoided much of that. So that is quite good to put into context. But today we're not just going to be talking about SpongeBob, we've got a lot of other great stuff coming up. The first thing we'll be talking about is we're going to highlight 3 of the IP assets we think are probably the most commonly overlooked in businesses. You can see them on your screen just now. It's of course product brands, which is quite similar to the SpongeBob story we were talking about before. We've also got trade secrets, and then finally we've got data. So we'll be talking a little bit about these today, and we'll also be going through some case studies based on them. So the first one we're going to talk about is product brands, and product brands are especially puzzling IP asset because all companies these days, almost all of them, I would say maybe 90%, move to trademark their corporate brand. It's something that companies think of straight away. It's such an obvious thing to do in the process. Most people have no issues with it. The problem is that products within a company, product brands that people are creating, people very, very rarely move to protect. And this can cause a lot of problems. One of the things we often see in our day-to-day is that product brands and businesses, whereas they might start off small, eventually once they grow, eventually once they accumulate a lot of good reputation, a lot of goodwill, a lot of people will usually look to either maybe sell them to a market participant or even spin them off into their own company to have them operate independently of the corporate brand. If you're doing either of those things, it's incredibly important to have proper formal protection in place. It eases either the transition to a new company, or it will provide a buyer with assurances over what you're selling. There's another few things as well. Lack of protection early on can lead to a lot of little problems popping up later in life. So for example, you know, markets these days have got a lot of companies in them operating in similar sectors. You might have an unregistered product brand you're using, you might think you're safe, and then suddenly 5 years down the line, someone might make an application for the name, and you may not really have a leg to stand on in court. Similarly, we see a lot of coincidental trademark applications where someone not even doing not even considered a competitor to you, not even in the same area, might just think of the name themselves for your product and make an application for it. And again, suddenly the rug's been pulled from under, if you will.
Yeah, it's also worth thinking about the expansion to your marketing tool that this could provide if you were to have the kind of formal registrations in place. So you could do things like register separate domain names for a product line, or along with their own dedicated website or social media account and so on. So much of these measures, as you can imagine, shouldn't be overly costly to the business either, so kind of worth getting in place at that time. Another useful tip is also not to start producing things like marketing materials too early before you actually have the protection in place, or until you actually research whether you can protect that trademark or product that you're looking to register, in case you have issues when it comes to you've already produced the documents and you might have already started marketing the new product, but actually don't have the protection in place, or somebody else is already using it, and then you have to go back and again constantly make changes, and it may not be the best for your kind of image as well. And again, as I said, think of the kind of cost. Trademarks for most businesses are relatively inexpensive, whether it's for your corporate brand or your product brand, and the risk of not having that most of the time will outweigh the kind of cost itself. Another couple of things just to kind of keep in mind as well, is even if you don't have the registered trademark in place, you can do things like have the appropriate legends on any documents or marketing that you have, such as the TM symbol for something that you haven't registered or it's just filed at the moment, and that will help deter any competitors or anybody else looking to kind of move into that space. And again, anything you're registering, make sure it's in the actual company name and not the name of the individual, so that it can actually be classed as an asset of the company. And again, it will avoid any situations down the line. So we thought the best way to kind of show this an example was a case study of a previous client that we had. And this should help kind of showcase the benefit in separating and registering a product brand. So we had a client previously that specialised in developing healthcare devices, and they just created a device to treat a specific condition. So they'd already created a separate website with a unique domain, and they were in the process of registering trademarks for the product brand, which was all good and well. So we came in and advised on the importance of having that clear protection in place, to allow for the product line and the brand to be split and then sold off to another company, which is what the company was planning to do. So it was a valuation job where we valued the product brand, which allowed a maximum purchase price to be agreed, as we kind of highlighted the value of the brand related assets. And that was in addition to things like the technical specifications and the device firmware that formed part of the sale. So those were potentially the kind of main assets the client was thinking of, and not realising how the actual product brand could help maximise the purchase price. So the valuation allowed the new buyer, gave them a kind of clear picture of what the IP was and what value had been created around separating that product brand. And then this makes it much easier when they acquire for them to manage and incorporate that product brand into their own business. And again, benefits both the kind of seller and the buyer in that situation. Okay, so moving on to our next asset class we're looking at today is trade secrets. And we find this is an asset that kind of many companies think they have or know they have, but they don't quite understand the importance of recognising, communicating and protecting whatever they actually are classing as a trade secret. So something Jack touched on a little earlier. So trade secrets in themselves can be quite a broad area, as it may actually be another asset which is classed as a trade secret. So this could be, for example, say a software program or an algorithm within software, or something like critical organizational knowledge around an internal process. And both of those are things that you wouldn't want any outsiders to be aware of. So it's still technically a trade secret, but it's actually a separate asset class, so something to be aware of. It can also be to kind of complement another asset which isn't actually a secret. So say a patent which is in the public domain, again, a trade secret might be a complementary kind of asset to that, which again you want to keep behind kind of closed doors. So the way to kind of think about it is if the trade secret underpins a new product or a process, in your business, then again, make sure it's recorded as a trade secret specifically, and an employee is kind of disclosing that externally.
Yeah, absolutely, Saj. I mean, it's something that we deal with a lot. I deal with a lot of trade secrets, talking to companies about them. Again, as Saj touched upon earlier, it really is one of the things you often see. You'll speak to the company and you ask them, you know, do you have trade secrets? And they'll say yes. You'll then say, right, what protection procedures do you have in place? And there'll be a rather awkward silence. And it's weird, Saj, especially when trade secrets can be, you know, at the core and of many businesses, and sometimes the most valuable asset a business can have. Especially when there's so many simple things you can do to protect them. I mean, when we speak to companies, the first thing we always say is get an official policy in place, and that doesn't need to be a comprehensive 100-page document or anything like that, but it does need to be some form of documentation just covering what trade secrets are in your business, you know, who has access to them, what your sort of policies are around restricting access to trade secrets within your company. Another really key thing to have when you have trade secrets is to get a trade secret register in place. And this is so important, especially when it comes to valuation. You want to have a trade secret register, and all that really is some sort of documented list of exactly what trade secrets you have, the exact name you are assigning to them, and also some additional information such as maybe who has access to them, who's allowed access, and even things like who may have had exposure to them in the past. Trade secret registers, they often go hand in hand with a trade secret manager. And this can be very, very important. A trade secret manager should be someone in your company who you assign as the person who's solely responsible for updating and storing that register. And that really is key, because with trade secrets, obviously, as we all know, they can reduce in value as more and more people get exposure to them, as more and more leakage occurs. So trying to restrict who has access to that register to as few people as possible is so important. And that's why having one person managing that, you know, is a really, really good thing to put in place. There's a few other little tips as well. I mean, in terms of your staff contracts, most companies, and pretty much every company, will have some sort of confidentiality clause within staff contracts. We find that very, very few actually define trade secrets within them. And that can be very, very important as well going forward, simply because if an employee maybe discloses trade secrets to another party, or they leave your company and then take them with them, it's very, very important that you stamp out that argument of, I didn't know this was a trade secret. By defining them, that's you saying to them, these are what trade secrets are, you know the rules behind them, you shouldn't be spreading them. And again, just to sort of echo that point as well, any documents in your company that are considered a trade secret, make sure they've got the proper labels, the proper legends on them, saying that they're confidential, and really making that known to employees exactly what they should and should not be doing with them. So just to illustrate this point, this is a really, really good case study. It's a company who we worked with last year, and it's a poultry producer. So they came to us last year, they were seeking a valuation, and they knew they had some sort of IP related to the protection of a particular bird that was part of their business. The problem they had was that they didn't know what sort of IP asset it was. We came in, we'd done our diligence, we looked through all of the documentation, spoke to the client extensively, and eventually we decided that actually the piece of IP they had was a trade secret, as opposed to what they originally thought was some other form of protection. What I'm going to do now is going to do a little quick exercise with you all. So we've said that we identified this form of protection around this particular bird was a trade secret. We're now going to ask you what you think the actual trade secret was. So you should now see 3 polling options pop up on your screen. So everyone gets the buzzers at the ready. So our question to you is, what trade secret do you think this is? The options here, we have option A, which is an efficient packaging procedure. Could be that. We've got option B, is it technical breeding knowledge? And then we've finally got option C, is it recipes for cooking the birds? So there we go. So your answers are flying in now. You're very, very fast on the trigger, which is good to see. No one's switched off yet. And we'll give you a few moments to complete that. Very, very good. Is it tight? Is it tight? We'll soon find out. A few more seconds to finish this poll. Very good. And we'll now bring up our results. So as you can see in front of you just now, you actually got the answer right, and the majority of you did. Technical breeding knowledge, that is what the trade secret in this case was. And again, that sort of echoes back to what I was speaking about previously, where they thought they had some sort of legal protection in place in terms of the rights to producing this bird, whereas what it actually was all of their documentation surrounding feeding procedures, just surrounding raising the bird, timings like that, at particular seasons. All of that was what should have been considered a trade secret within their business. And what we were able to do is we identified that. We then described them all of the protection measures that I outlined before that should be in place to protect that. They put all those in place. We eventually valued it and got an evaluation. And again, by knowing that it was a trade secret and by protecting it as such, that increased the monetary value of that asset, which again is very, very important.
Okay, so moving on to the last asset that we're talking about today, we thought was very important to mention is data. As it relates to information that's almost always used and created by a company, but it's never actually thought of as an asset in its own right, which could be put to many uses, or that could be quite common, to be fair. So think of what types of information you can gather kind of on a day-to-day or regular basis, and if it's something that's not underpinning your revenues at the moment, think, could that be of use to someone else potentially? So data that isn't of obvious value to you, could be of significant value, and that could be things like customer lists, pricing information, order history. So all of that you might utilise at the moment, and whether you are or you're not, again, that could be potentially useful to somebody else. So it's information that businesses tend to hold, quite close to their chests. But as long as it's kept in the hands of a direct competitor, there may be out-licensing opportunities for your established database. If that's something you've built up over a number of years, then there might be somebody in a different sector who could make use of that, and that's not going to impact on your business in any way. And it's not just customer information. It could also be things like know-how and software testing data, and other types of information which you've built up. And again, that could be of value to someone. So it's another thing to kind of think about within your business. You don't want an asset sitting there which could be generating value but isn't at the moment. So another case study to kind of show that point was a previous client of ours, which was the Institute of Administrative Management. And this was actually a company that was going into administration, but it had been around for a very long time. They're one of the UK's oldest management institutes, since being incorporated in 1918. So they came to us and we were able to identify a number of valuable IP assets. So some of the kind of more obvious ones that the company were kind of pushing to the forefront, so things like the rights and qualifications. So that included things like qualification specifications, study guides, handbooks and exam scripts, as well as the brand itself. As you can imagine, it had been built up over a long-standing history, had a strong presence in the market, and it was attached to a kind of website and domain. But one of the kind of key assets we uncovered was actually the student member databases, which included all the 7,000 students that were on the programme at the point the company went into liquidation. So we were able to, first of all, value the assets and then sell all the IP assets in the business to another company, Industry Qualifications, who were another regulated awarding organisation. And in particular, we thought the key part of the deal, or the main driver of the sale, was actually the database of the 7,000 students, as that allowed them to kind of pick up where they left off, continue to finish their course, and obviously the new provider had access to all that information and was able to basically continue running the business as it was running before. So again, a key part of the business that was sold. We also just wanted to kind of highlight our kind of methodology. We find this is a very good kind of starting point, and it keeps things quite simple, and it's something that companies or advisors can kind of do themselves. Where we look and break down the kind of 10 key IP asset areas to consider if you're reviewing your own IP. So in addition to those that we've mentioned today, the kind of three main most overlooked ones we've talked about, we also have things like know-how, key people, things like critical relationships and business processes, and so on. So these might not be as obvious or at the forefront of your business, but each company is different, and one of these could be your most critical or most kind of important asset. So again, something you want to kind of consider. And from that, I'm going to move on to think about, well, what really drives value in your business, and how does this link to kind of your products and the services that you're offering? Again, that's something else you want to be thinking about, and that will help you identify and flag up any kind of critical IP, and then you want to link that back to, which IP actually underpins my business and forecasts and revenue. And these are all kind of questions you can be asking yourself, and then you might realise actually it's this asset or that asset which is allowing me to do that.
Okay, so what we've got now is a real little treat for you just at the end. We're going to talk about how we tend to, at the start of jobs we're working on as part of the valuation team, begin to map out what IP assets a company may have. And this is usually before we've even done much of our strong diligence and had a real conversation with the client. So this is how to think about it. What we tend to produce is IP maps that run right through the core of a business and pick out the IP at each stage. So we're going to show you an example just now of Amazon. So Amazon, the big online retailer, we're going to go through their business and show how we would think to pick out the IP they have. So what a lot of people think of is when they try to identify IP, is they think we just sit down and start to list off assets that are related to a company and eventually ends up with a full list. It doesn't really work like that. That's very, very hard to do. What you've got to do is tie the IP asset to each stage of their business and exactly how they make money, because that is how you find the real value. So thinking of Amazon just now, we would always start off, if we had this job, if we were sitting down to do it, we would think, what's the product, what's their service? So obviously Amazon are an online retailer and they do a few things, they make money in a few ways. One of the ways is quite obvious. They've got their actual physical products. They've got things like Amazon Echo, Amazon Kindle. So if you list off those two, straight away you're thinking, well, there's two product brands right from the off. And not only are they product brands, they've also got the corporate brand, Amazon, attached to it. Straight away you've got a few IP assets there captured just with that little thought at the start. Another way to make money is through their online business. It's not just them making sales on their site, it's many independent sellers as well where they take a cut of the fee. So you're thinking now they've got independent online sellers using their website. All of these are critical relationships they need to keep and they need to manage properly. So there's another second IP asset right at the fore of their business, the critical relationships they maintain with their sellers. You then think, right, we now know what the products are. Now how do people actually buy them? So what's the purchase process? So for Amazon, obviously, an online retailer, you're going onto their website to make purchases. And straight away when you say website, firstly you've highlighted one IP asset, which is the website itself, but also that website has a lot of unique, really clever functionality, things like e-commerce functionality, search engine optimization, all this sort of stuff that's built into the Amazon website. So there'll be a few little pieces of software there that are quite valuable to them as well. And obviously every website has a domain name attached. Amazon have many. They've got a vast portfolio of domain names, the main one obviously being Amazon.com. You've also got things like Amazon.co.uk, Amazon in other countries as well. So again, lots of formal IP there that's behind the purchase process. And finally, obviously their website, it's not just some boring software package with no information on it. They've got a lot of product information and a lot of images as well, not all of which will be owned by them, but a lot of them will be, and that's copyright as an IP asset. And again, that could have value, not just to them, but to a competitor as well. So let's assume we've gone onto Amazon now, we've bought our pair of shoes or whatever you're buying off Amazon. What happens next? It's delivery time and it's warehouse time. So you've made the purchase, that then gets fed back to the warehouse. What sort of IPs at that stage? Well, you're going to have very obvious things straight from the off. Amazon's warehouse and delivery system is all handled by software, so there's an asset right there. The software to manage the order system, and also there's going to be software to manage the full delivery process. And again, it's all electronic. Amazon's warehouses as well, but not just massive, dumps of products. They're very specifically designed. So there's going to be a lot of IP designs in there as well. Warehouse floor plans, designs that are set out to make sure that getting products from the warehouses is an optimized process as possible. So there's another IP asset there. So you now know how they do the delivery process, how they manage their warehouse. The final point to think now is what all of this sits on, what is this built on in the background. And for Amazon, a lot of it is going to be research and development. So everything we've touched upon here, there's going to be a lot of technical data, a lot of negative know-how involved in that as well. That sometimes when you're testing things, it doesn't go right, you record why it didn't work. So they'll have that for each stage of their development. They'll also have some formal IP too. So some of the technology that they're developing, things like drones, for example, they'll have formal IP protecting it, such as patents as well. And the main thing to never forget with Amazon as well is what it bases its entire business model on. It uses it for all of its processes, it's its customer database. Amazon are collecting details from everyone, storing that, that's key to their business. And straight away now we've done this here, you can see a really rough map of the sort of IP Amazon might have, and then you can start to think obviously about expanding this and actually valuing it And the main thing to think about too is everything we've listed here is key to their USP of being fast, efficient, forward thinking. That's so important in IP as well.
Okay, so just to finish off here with our 5 key takeaways. So the main things we really wanted to get across, and we hope that you take away from our kind of webinar today. So first of all, it's just taking regular stock of the IP that you own, and then after that, making sure you're putting that protection in place to safeguard it. Seems like an obvious one, but you'll be surprised at how often that doesn't occur. Also, link your unique selling point with the IP and communicate that to key stakeholders. So something that a lot of companies will be thinking about, but then again, you need to link that with your IP and show how your IP underpins what you do as a business. Also, implement strategies to manage any valuable IP. Again, we've touched on certain areas today. And again, that's not an easy thing to do, but it's something you should be thinking about and have in the back of your mind, that this is something I want to develop. Also, record and protect IP as soon as you identify it. And don't kind of delay and wait until problems arise down in the future. And then lastly, think about the potential value and the use of the IP to any kind of third parties. So somebody outside of the business, what could they use the IP for? And is it something I can sell? Is it something I can kind of license out and get maximum value for it? Okay, so that's the webinar for today. Thanks again everyone who kind of took the time out to join us. We've kept everything obviously quite high level and simple today, so we hope that gives you some kind of useful tips and kind of starting points of how to identify and unlock the kind of value in your IP. As I said, it's not something that's easy to do as what we've showed today, but if there's something you have any questions or issues with, then obviously feel free to get in touch after the webinar. Our contact details are there if there is anything, if there's any issues you have, and we'll love to get back to you quickly. Okay, so bye everyone.
Yeah, thanks very much for listening. It's been a pleasure, and hopefully we'll see you all next time.